Welcome back to another episode of the Trauma Queen podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Alla. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about memory processing and the importance of processing memories when it comes to actually healing from trauma for good. Memory processing is a tool that we use where we retrieve a memory from the past and we recode it. This is what's happening in your brain. What's happening in your body is when we retrieve this memory and when we correctly process a memory, we're also going to be pairing that with a somatic release where you get to release the emotions that were potentially trapped in that memory. And we're actually also going to recode it. The recoding part of it actually looks like if you were in a situation where you were trapped, we're going to be freeing you and we're going to be freeing that inner child. If you were in a situation where you felt unsafe, we're going to be taking that child out of that moment and into another moment where they felt really safe and loved and protected. Now, when we say memory processing, it's like we said, it sounds quite clinical, but what's actually happening is we're doing the inner child work. We're doing the somatics where we're recoding this memory so that you can know, one, as I said, that was then and this is now. Once a memory is open, in order to close it off, there needs to be a number of things that happen in order for your brain to go, you know what, actually, we can file that away now. And what needs to happen is that there needs to be some sort of conclusion. There needs to be a new narrative, because a lot of the time memories are kept open because of the level of confusion that we felt as a child. We couldn't understand what was happening. Once you have a new narrative and you have an understanding from an adult's perspective, that memory can then be closed off and moved away, as well as experiencing the emotions that you had to suppress in that moment, as well as the somatic. So for instance, if you were in a freeze state, if you were in a memory, a traumatic memory or a traumatic moment where you couldn't move, you couldn't run, you couldn't do anything, a somatic healing perspective whilst processing the memory, whilst in the correct brainwave, would look like moving your body, would look like saying the words that you need to say, getting them out. All of this is done in order to correctly process a memory. It involves bringing those different elements together to make it feel like you got to do the thing that you couldn't do at the time. So if you wanted to run, we're going to make it feel like you got to run. If you wanted to hide, we're going to make it feel like you got to hide. If you're going to want to stand up for yourself and speak up for yourself and yell back at the person that's yelling at you, we're going to make it feel like you got to do that. And we do that through saying the words, through visualizing, and through also understanding what were the subconscious beliefs you decided about yourself in that moment and shifting those as well. This memory processing technique involves all of those elements, but what we're essentially doing is retrieving the memory and we're recoding it with new information, new nervous system information, new thoughts, new beliefs, new experiences, and new visuals. So if we're taking you from this traumatic experience where you were trapped and you were helpless and you felt unsafe, and all of a sudden, through having you in the correct brainwave and taking you on the correct journey to this new experience where you felt safe and loved and protected, and you got to escape that situation and you get to tell that child this wasn't your fault and you didn't deserve this and this is why it's happened, and you give them that narrative. All of a sudden, the brain's going to take that and it's going to believe that that really happened. You're going to know logically that it didn't, but it's going to feel so much like it did. And so then the brain goes, well, that's not really relevant to us anymore. We don't need to have flashbacks of that anymore. That's not really relevant to us. We've recoded it. We've experienced it. We can file that away now and know that that happened in the past without having to constantly replay it. An example of this, of a memory that needs to be processed, and I have many of them because there's been plenty of traumas, but when you know a memory needs to be processed is when it continues to play in your mind. And often we have resistance to processing the memories that would give us the biggest shift, or the memories that we're the most afraid of. These are generally the ones that are going to actually transform our lives, but they're the ones that we have the most resistance to. And so I think actually breaking down what memory processing is for you it could make it worse. It could make it better, because I think knowing the steps involved, you do have to go back into the memory. You do have to retrieve it. You have to visualize it. You have to take yourself back there in order for it to feel real. But it's only a moment in time. And it's a moment in time that you're potentially thinking about all the time. You're having flashbacks to, it's popping into your mind like it's already there. It's already controlling you. But you do have to go into it in this session. But you're going into it in order to allow those feelings to come up, in order to allow the confusion to come up, in order for you to allow the narratives, whatever it is that needs to come up to the surface, so that you can then recode it, so that you can then take that child to safety, so that you can then help them to feel less confused, give them the love, give them whatever they need, purge those feelings, bring in new feelings. It shifts in one session if you do it correctly. And obviously, as a recotherapist, we do it correctly. And I know how hard it is, because there have been a couple of memories that really stand out to me that I knew that I needed to process them. Like, I know what the steps are. I know what needs to be done. And I knew how impactful it was going to be when I did process them, but I still avoided doing it, because this is what we do. We avoid pain. We avoid struggle. We avoid going into the thing. And one of the most prominent beliefs, or the biggest example, is the most fresh in my mind, which is that in February this year, I took a medication. So I often get sinus issues and sinus pain. And I took a medication that someone had recommended to me for sinus pain. And it was a medication that I've never tried before. And I took it, and within, I want to say 10 seconds, maybe a little bit long, maybe 30 seconds, I went into anaphylactic shock. So I'm very allergic to this medication, never had it before, so I didn't know. And yeah, within like sort of 10 to 30 seconds, it's like hard to pinpoint because it was such a blur. I started to get really confused, and my tongue started to swell, and I started to feel restriction. And just like that, my breathing stopped, and my partner Gav had to call the ambulance, and they came and injected me with adrenaline to try and get me to start breathing again. And I was taken to hospital and had another like second reaction where it started to happen again. And the feeling that I had when I was waiting for the ambulance, when I couldn't breathe, was a feeling that I had felt before in my life, but I hadn't realized. And so this anaphylaxis, this feeling of I can't breathe and I'm going to die. And there was this feeling of like, this is it. Like in a second, this is it. I'm going to die. I'm not going to make it through. I then over the next month uncovered a memory where I had really similar, almost identical feelings in my teen years. So when I was around 13 years old, my father and my grandfather, my opa, I called him, got together, and I had told my father what my opa had done when I was younger. And I believe that they got together to scare me into being quiet again, because obviously there was this fear of, if I'm telling my dad, who else am I telling? And my opa was like, we need to shut her down. We need to like lock this down. And on this day, I'm not going to go into details because it's quite horrific, but on this day, they tortured me in a number of different ways, very sadistic ways. And one of those ways was by waterboarding, so by having something over my face and putting water on so I couldn't breathe. And it was that same feeling of restriction. And in that moment when I couldn't breathe, when I was having this anaphylaxis, in the days after it, I could keep hearing my dad's voice saying, stop, you're going to kill her. Stop, you're going to kill her. And I was like, why is this happening? Why am I having these flashes? And over that month, I had these flashes and these snippets of kind of walking into that room and seeing them in the room and seeing these different like utensils, and there was all different sorts of torture involved. But I remember like once this memory came up, I was like, I do not want to work on this. I don't want to lay down and look at it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to do this. But the only thing that I felt like was really stopping me in my healing journey from actually healing was that for however long it's been, 6 years since I've been speaking up about what my father did, every single day there would be a thought of, is he going to come and kill me? Is he going to come for me? And every time I would speak up on a bigger podcast or a bigger platform or be featured in something, I would be like, is he going to see this? And is this going to be the thing that tips him over the edge and he comes for me? And I like cars driving past my house at nighttime. If I heard a car outside, I'd be like, oh no, it's my dad. He's coming for me. This is the day he's going to kill me. And it was the one thing that was frustrating me because I was like, I'm not going to stop speaking about it. But I couldn't stop this panic of feeling like he was going to come for me. And I realized that by not processing this memory when it came back up, I was wanting to keep myself safe because I knew unconsciously that if I process this traumatic memory, all of a sudden I wouldn't be on the lookout. I wouldn't be afraid. Because this fear of him killing me and this fear of dying because of him was coming from this memory. It was coming from this trauma. And so I processed it. I went into it and it wasn't easy, but it was once. I went into it and I did all of the things that I needed to do. I saved my younger self. I beat the shit out of them and I took my power back and I told them to leave her alone and I punched them and kicked them and pushed them away. And I called the police and got the police to come and told them, and I visualized all of this so vividly. And I saved my younger self and I told her that she didn't deserve this and that they're not going to come for her now and that she is safe and she's protected and that she's not going to die. They're not going to kill her. They can't hurt her. Through that process of processing that memory since then, it has been, that was February. We are now in September. There has probably only been 2 occasions where I've gone, that could be my dad. There's only been 2 occasions where I've had that fear and it's gone. It was every single day and I have not had that fear since. And I don't think about it. It doesn't come into my mind anymore. And it was something that I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't go away. I'd done so much nervous system regulation and so much belief work and I'd processed all these traumas. I was like, why isn't this going away? And that processing that last memory did it. And this wasn't the first time that I'd avoided processing a memory. There was another memory with my dad when I was 19 where he raped me, and I knew that it was the most awful of a lot of those childhood memories because I was a lot older and I knew what was happening, and it was just the context of it was different. But for months and months, I'd processed every other memory except that one. I didn't want to go into it. I wouldn't go into it. And I suffered and struggled, and I kept having flashbacks of it. And it wasn't until I healed it that then I found this whole new version of myself and this whole new version of power and of just this stripping of shame, because there was a lot of shame in that moment and these gross feelings. And I feel like a lot of that just shifted when I did this memory. But it was like, when I process this memory, I understand what it feels like to not want to go into it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is every time I have eventually gone into it, I wish I did it sooner. And I do it once and then it's done. And then my life just opens up in all of these new ways. So actually going back into and processing the memories is so essential. I'm that kind of person that if I could just change the subconscious beliefs and feel the emotions and do everything except having to process the memory, I 100% would. But I know that actually processing the visuals and actually going back into it and changing it, talking to your younger self, changing it around, taking her to a safe place, letting her fight back, saying the words out loud, moving the emotions, moving your body, doing all of this and actually processing and recoding that memory. It's like magic that you don't have those flashbacks anymore. That memory doesn't come up, and everything that you believed because of it also shifts alongside it. Some people might think my memories or my traumas aren't affecting me because I don't have flashbacks. And this is actually something that I hear quite often from people. I don't have flashbacks. It's not really affecting me. There are 2 different types of memories. We have an explicit memory, and an explicit memory is a memory that we can recall. We can see it, we can remember it, we've got the visuals, there's a narrative, there's a start, middle, and an end. and we sort of know what's happening. Now, trauma often isn't stored explicitly like that. Trauma is actually often fragmented and stored what's called implicitly. The best way for me to describe this is that the day that you learnt to ride a bike is an explicit memory. You remember the sun was shining, you had your cute little pink bike, you were riding down the road. That's an explicit memory. Implicit memory is the memory that just allows you to jump on a bike today and start riding, and you don't have to think like, turn the pedal. You don't have to think about it all. You just do that naturally, unconsciously. Your body remembers how to do it. In the same way that your body remembers how to drive a car and ride a bike and eat with a fork, your body remembers the trauma. Your body remembers that certain places, sounds, smells, people, relationships, words aren't safe. And even if you don't consciously have the memory, the body's going to remember those things. So this is where people often, you might have to use your triggers as information to lead you to the memory. Sometimes the memories don't just come consciously. You might actually have to start looking at, why am I always triggered by this certain situation? Where does that come from? And when you start that questioning of where does this come from, then you start to unlock, actually, it could be this, it could be that. There's a difference here in that some memories are suppressed and some memories are repressed. So a suppressed memory is a memory that you've consciously gone, I don't want to think about that. I'm going to push that down there and not think about that. A repressed memory or a repressed memory is a memory that is unconsciously pushed down. You actually don't even know that you don't know that it's there. You don't even know that there's something there until it shows you, because it's really good at hiding. It's so good at hiding that you don't even know that it's in your brain at all. Whereas a suppressed memory is like, I don't really want to think about that. I don't really want to think about that. Let's not think about that. Let's not talk about that. So there is a difference here between the two. And these memories are still affecting you every day without you realizing or not. So just because you're not having flashbacks doesn't mean that you're not having body memories and that your body isn't remembering and that you aren't being triggered unconsciously in all different sorts of everyday situations. So the way that I like to explain it to people is, if you've got triggers, they're not coming from nowhere. You've got memories. They're linked to those triggers. Triggers don't just happen. I mean, some of them are passed down genetically, which is a whole other episode, how we can pass trauma down genetically. But a lot of them are, especially the big ones that come with emotional reactions, they are coming from a past moment or a past memory that needs to be processed. If you can't access it, if you can't access it, or you don't know what the memory is, or it's completely blocked, and you're saying, well, I'm struggling, but I don't know why, and actually don't have any memories. Having whole chunks of childhood missing and having no memories at all of childhood is a sign of repressed memory. That's where I would say, if you have triggers with no source, there's a pretty big chance that there is a repressed memory there. Repressed memories are a fickle thing, and I've got about 3 episodes to date on repressed memories. So you can go back and listen to those if you think, this might be me. I've got a lot of triggers but no memories, or big chunks of childhood missing. That's a good direction for you to take. The thing I will say about repressed memory is that they come back when they're ready, not when you're trying to look for them. They are their own. They do what they want. One myth that I would love to bust wide open about healing from traumatic memories is that you don't have to go into them. And I think so many therapists or so many people come to me and say like, do I actually have to go into the memory? Because, I've been told by so-and-so or so that I can just heal the emotions and shift the beliefs, and that I can do other things and not actually process the memory. Like, I don't have to go back into it. And I quite often say to these people, how has that worked for you so far? And what brought you here? Probably the memory. So you do have to process the memory. You do have to go back into it to be able to recode it. And you don't just go back into it. It's not like, I think that the difference that I want to explain here is that when you have a flashback, it's uncontrolled. When you have a flashback, you're just doing the dishes and all of a sudden this fucked up memory comes up into your mind and you have this overwhelming feeling of like panic or rage or fear or whatever it is. and your heart races and you feel out of control and you feel afraid and you feel like the emotions kind of take over, and it actually makes the memory have even more power over you, because all of a sudden you feel powerless to the memory. You feel the flood of emotions. You feel even more confused about why you're having the flashback. And that's just the memory building in intensity, right? When you process a memory with somebody who is trained to do it correctly, when I say correctly, it is controlled. You know you're going into it. You're choosing to go into it. You're going into it whilst in a theta brainwave. So your brain is in already an altered state to what it is generally. So this is why if you're in talk therapy and you're talking to your therapist in a beta brainwave and you're talking about this traumatic memory and you're feeling hot and all the emotions are coming up and everything and you leave feeling worse, it's because that's not processing. That is not processing. That is not processing. That is talking about it. Talking about it isn't processing it. When you go into the theta brainwave and your subconscious mind is activated and you are it's almost it's a hypnotic-like state. Hypnosis is the act of putting someone into a theta brainwave. When you're in that brainwave, your brain doesn't really know what's real and what's not real. So it can imagine a different future. It can imagine a different outcome. So you go into that brainwave, you go into that memory in a controlled setting where someone is guiding you. And all of a sudden, these feelings come back up. This child is being harmed, is trapped, is having these things happening to them that they can't do anything about. All of a sudden, you get to step into this memory in this moment as your adult self at the age that you are right now. You then get to control the narrative of what happens, something that you didn't get to do back then. And when you get to control the narrative, you get to tell the child, this is what this means and this is what this means, that you take away the confusion. You change what's happening. You give them back their power or their safety or love or all of the above. You take them out of the situation. You implant new feelings. We regulate your nervous system. All of this paired together allows your brain to go, that's done. That is finished. That's done. That's not who I am anymore. That doesn't affect me anymore. That's not a part of my life anymore, because that emotion, that confusion, and those narratives have all been shifted, recoded, and you do it once. This is what I think people don't understand. We work on each traumatic memory once. You don't have to go into it multiple times. You're not coming into therapy with me every week and we're talking about it. We shift it. We process it in the correct way once, and then it's gone and it's done. Even that memory that I spoke to you about earlier, being tortured by my father, being raped by my father, I worked on them once and I worked on them thoroughly. And I've never had to go back into them again. I don't have flashbacks. They don't affect my life. They're gone. I can talk about them now to you as if I'm talking about folding the washing, because then they have no impact. They have no emotional impact. They have no narrative. It almost feels like it didn't happen to me anymore. It feels like it happened to a different version of me, because it is a different version of me. That's how powerful it is. That's how rapid it is. A lot of people try to manifest, visualize, they do their mantras, they do their mindset hacks and their positive thinking, and they just keep coming up against the same barriers. And the barriers that they're coming up against are, one, their subconscious mind, but two, unprocessed memories. If you have unprocessed memories, and this again is where, if you've listened to the last episode about the subconscious, you can remove the belief of I'm not safe. For instance, I can remove this belief today from you of I'm not safe. But if you have evidence, past evidence from open traumatic memories where you felt unsafe, the brain isn't going to hold on to that new belief because it has way too much evidence that the other thing is true. So you can say all you want, I am safe, 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 I am safe. And you can journal it and you can do the mantras and you can manifest safety, but your panic will come back time and time again until you process the memory, because your brain is holding evidence that you are unsafe, unprocessed, open, raw evidence. Your brain has to know that was then and this is now. The memory has to be processed in order for you to be able to believe any of these new things. There is no other way. The brain will just keep having this evidence coming back up, and you'll just keep going in circles. So the mantras, the meditations, the journaling, the mindset work is amazing, but that is a later stage of healing. That is a much later stage of healing. This is why I created Triggered to Thriving, because people are getting caught in these patterns of doing the mindset work and the mantras and everything, and then thinking that healing doesn't work, when in actual fact, those are like tools that I use now when you're at an elevated level of healing, when you have gone through those foundational stages of safety and memory processing and rewiring your subconscious beliefs. Like, now I use mantras to implement like new, more powerful things that I want to believe that are in line with the identity that I've created. But if I've got all of these old beliefs that are open and raw, that doesn't feel old. That feels current because it's constantly being triggered. So you can't create and implant new beliefs through repetition, through mantras, through things like that, unless you have processed all of the evidence that you have, aka memories from the past. In today's culture of just move on, just get over it, good vibes only, which is actually kind of funny because my partner Gav has a good vibes only tattoo on the back of his leg. But this mindset is a positive, right? Good vibes only, move on, let it go. Don't let those thoughts, eat away at you. Just let it go, surrender is such a good place to be, but that is a later stage of healing. You can't, if you just go straight to that, you're bypassing doing all of the actual work. You're actually bypassing your trauma. You're actually bypassing, and it's not bypassing it. It just catches up with you again. So just moving on is not possible when past memories are constantly pulling you back into the past. Like, when a memory is triggered, whether it is visual or whether it is just a body memory, and you're just like triggered and activated, your brain doesn't know that was then and this is now. The actual timekeeper part of your brain goes offline. So when people say that was in the past, move on, it's actually not in the past. It's very much in the present when it's activated and triggered, because your brain doesn't know that was then and this is now. The timekeeper is offline. So this mindset of good vibes only and just move on and don't think about it is a really good mindset to adopt later on in your healing journey. This is more a spiritual side of things, would be, your thoughts if you have negative thoughts, you just release them. You don't focus on them. You don't let them grow. You just release them. You release the stories. You release the narratives. You just move on. You have fun. You enjoy life. This is all of the kind of things that I teach in Rise into Flow, which is the last part of the Trauma Triggered to Thriving series, but it cannot be used in order to bypass doing the actual work. And we do that. Naturally, we're drawn to that because we don't want to do the work, because it's scary and it's painful, and it takes a lot of bravery to do this kind of work. And this is why I say that it is for brave women. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it is so impactful. And this is why, if it was easy, everyone would do it. If it was easy, everyone would heal their traumas. Everyone would be the best version of themselves. We'd be walking around with everyone is confident and worthy and loving and just these vibrant rays of sunshine. But it's not. And the reason that it's not is because we're afraid of our emotions, not because we're really afraid of the visuals or the memory or what's actually happening in the memory, because we're afraid of feeling the feeling. The more comfortable that you can get with feeling your emotions and not being afraid of them, like, oh, I'm feeling a lot of fear in my body right now. Where did that come from? Like curiosity instead of like, oh, I'm feeling afraid. Am I going to have a panic attack? What's going to happen? Oh my God. And then the fear grows. The more that we can start to use our feelings or view our feelings as energy in motion, which is what they are, as soon as we can start to step outside of that and become comfortable with that, we're then ready to move into the healing world. And again, I salute every single woman that does this work, because it really is brave work. And I do believe that we can all be brave. We all have this moment, this glimmer where we just go, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to be brave and I'm just going to do it. And a lot of the time what stops you then and pulls you back is just your subconscious mind. Oh, we can't do that. It's not safe. I'm too scared. What if we go into it and we get worse? Like so many people's fears is, what if I do this and I feel worse than I am now? And most of the time I just say to people, like, you're never going to feel worse than you're feeling right now. Like, you've got decades of trauma stacked up behind you. You're only going to feel better and lighter once you start to do this. So that's the thing with processing memories is after each memory, there is this feeling of lightness. You might feel exhausted from the session, but there is this lightness, this just like, I can't explain it with words, but there is this lightness of just feeling physically lighter in your body, in your soul, in every way, shape or form. And that feeling, I think, is what really gets people back. That's the feeling that gets me back. Because even up until this year, you know, I still didn't want to go into that memory. I had to be brave over and over and over. I've had to be brave time and time again. It's not just one moment of bravery. It's being brave over and over and over again, showing up every single time. And it doesn't mean that I'm not scared. I'm always scared. I'm always like, oh, what's going to happen with this belief and what's it going to change and what's going to happen to my life? And, you know, I'm always like got this fear coming up, but I do it anyway. I do it afraid because I know that I have collected evidence now that every time I process a memory, my life gets better. Every time I process a memory, a new version of me comes out or a new experience happens or something amazing happens in my life because I've shifted this. And you can't collect that evidence and know how powerful this is and how powerful it is going to be for you if you don't at least start. So just book one session. Just try it once. Like I said, it's one memory, one session to process the memory. We can do multiple memories in one session sometimes, but you only need to work on them once to give your brain that evidence that it works. And I'm so confident about this that I've been actually thinking the last week about like a literal money back guarantee because we are that good at it and it works. It absolutely works. So I urge you to just give it a try. Just one session, you have nothing to lose. So if you have been trying other therapies and they haven't been working for you and you have this hesitation of like, I've tried things and they haven't worked before. Why should I believe you? Why should I trust you? There is an episode here where I talk about the 4 pillars of healing. The reason that you may not have healed in the past is because you haven't actually healed correctly. You haven't healed from these 4 pillars, which is the subconscious, the somatics, the memory processing, and the energetics, and pairing them all together. There is no other method or modality like this. It doesn't exist. There is nobody practicing in the way that we practice. So I do urge you to try it. It is different. It is different to other things in the industry in that it covers healing from all 4 of those pillars. So if you're interested, the best way to start your healing journey is to either enroll into Triggered to Thriving. You're going to learn all of this and so much more, or to book somebody in the online clinic. There are 6 women in the online clinic trained to do everything that I just spoke about. They are trained to process your memories, shift your subconscious beliefs, shift the energy, the emotions, somatics, all of it. And they are my top 6 therapists ready to roll. So you can book them on the online clinic under the one-on-one work category in the website, www.jessicaella.com.au. So again, I urge you to just give it a try. Just find, and a lot of people are saying to me, like, how do I know which therapist to book? Use your intuition. Who are you drawn towards? There's also buttons there that you can click to watch lives that I've done with each of them to get to know their strengths and their personalities. Honestly, any of those 6 are going to give you the shifts that I'm talking about here today. They are so good at what they do. I hope that today, by sharing the memories that I was avoidant towards, the memories that I didn't want to process, and, you know, the fact that I still had these fears come up and I had to be brave time and time again, I'm really hoping that this can encourage you to be brave and to do the same, because I truly want you to heal. Watching women suffer and stay small and play it small and feel anxious and unsafe and scared and afraid and feeling worthless, and just watching them suffer, I can't something inside me, like I just want to help, and I just can't watch it. And especially when I know that there is something out there that's going to be able to help you. So I just want you to be brave, and I just want you to try it. And I want to thank you for listening to this episode today. We've got some more coming up, going deeper into some of these aspects. So if you're wanting to learn a bit more about what aromatherapy is and how it works and why we're doing these 4 pillars, we're going to be going through each of these 4 pillars. We've already done subconscious, and we're going to be going into somatics and energetics. So there is more education there for you so that you can understand what it is that we're doing before you even book in as well. So thank you again for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.